Hi, I'm Naveen Vasudeva, and welcome to Have Your Say, a cybersecurity podcast which has been sponsored by Cybertalks and Barclays. I'm here with Ben de la Salle, who is a friend and a peer. I think we met about 3 years ago. Ben and I have both had the pleasure of working as CISOs for large institutions and working in the sort of virtual CISO space more recently. Ben runs his own organisation. If you have a look at his LinkedIn profile, he's got about 19 different job titles on there, which is also quite interesting.
All doing the same thing.
Which he says not in any particular order, so I think that's quite good as well. But thank you so much, Ben, for coming in to talk to me today. I mean, there's so much for us to talk about that's happening in cybersecurity. But before we do that, it would be really good for the audience to sort of get a sense of who you are and the things that you've done, maybe the kind of career that you've had within cybersecurity, any challenges you faced or, successes you want to talk about. I think that'd be a good sort of starting point. Yeah,
we can start there. So it must be coming up to about 24 years now. So obviously when I started out, it was IT security. We had none of the cyber buzzword or the budgets that go with it these days. But I have a technology background. I did computer science at university. I was your typical IT nerdy child. I'd spend a lot of the sunny days inside either coding or playing on games machines and then mix that up with mountain biking, outdoor activity to try and keep some kind of colour to my skin. So, at Computer Science University, left there, very fortunate to work at some Microsystems, and I worked there for, in total, nearly 9 years.
Okay, wow.
And that was a fantastic company to work for because they were desperately trying to lead in innovation and enabled you to fail in a way that grew success out of the end of it.
Which is good, yeah.
Absolutely fantastic time there. The follow-on parts of my career, probably not quite as enjoyable as that, but still gave me a vast of experience. So, I've worked in system integrators, I've worked for the Big Four, I've worked for outsourcers, and I've worked in industry, as we were talking about, for a financial services business.
Yep.
When I left there in 2017, I was Group CISO of a number of regulated businesses within that group. And so I've seen the transition from the challenge of trying to sell security, people continually asking about return on investment, which to this day continues to be hard to demonstrate, through to the era where people just accept the fact that it's part of doing business, it's a cost of doing business, and now it's about making sure they're getting the right bang for their buck.
And what has been the turning point between when it sounded like it was fun and potentially not so fun anymore?
I don't know, I think there was always that passion for technology that when I was younger kept me going, and I think there was a lot of innovation that was happening in the early times of security. I think we are awash of technology products at the moment, many touting innovation and next gen and all the other acronyms that we like to put next to things.
So do you think it's more of the same, just packaged differently?
Yeah, I think people are starting to use AI as a sales pitch rather than necessarily the core of their product. We went through this period, and I won't name products, but we went through this period where these silver bullets started to arise with claims about how successful they would be and how little management they required. And I think fortunately as an industry we've kind of got past that.
Yeah.
But I still think that we are covered a little bit in jargon and terminology which doesn't actually represent what these products are doing.
So I'm kind of on the fence between AI and ML, sort of machine learning type things. I don't think there's really any practical use of AI in cyber yet that I can talk to. I'm more on the fence that it's machine learning, that it still needs a level of human interaction to do
Tuning,
something.
Care,
100%, right.
Absolutely.
So do you buy into this, fully automated pen testing type stuff?
No, actually, with our customers, we actually talk about the fact that we have manual penetration testers and the value that they bring, because I still think that we think differently, right?
Yeah.
And actually, one of the big challenges we had, I remember when we were looking at doing some physical penetration testing when I was in industry, trying to get professional companies to do that is, in my mind, quite difficult because they're good, hard-working individuals that know the rules that we should abide to and see how we are managing those rules.
Yeah.
Get yourself a nice ex-con who throws the rule book out the window. They will walk straight past your CCTV, straight past your security guard, and into your building, right?
Yep.
And we demonstrated that on a number of initiatives that we've run then and since, actually.
Okay. So fast forward to what you're doing now. So you're very much an independent consultancy firm that's providing advice and guidance to, I assume, a large client base, big and small. So how was that transition for you personally, moving away from being a CISO to being a CEO, effectively?
Well, I think the first transition I had to deal with was being an employee for 20 odd years and then realising no one was paying me for the first time in my life. And I remember waking up on the 1st of November and sat there and thinking, there's no money coming in. There's nothing. If I don't generate some work, there's no paycheck at the end of the month. And when we started out, it was actually when I started out, I was truly an independent and I was on my own and I was trying to be marketing, delivery, product development, everything all in one.
Right.
And that was very challenging. And it was something I consciously focused on, was ensuring that what we didn't become was you're buying Ben as a product. And actually you're buying capability as a service, or you're buying specialist services like penetration testing or forensics or those other things. So that was the hardest thing. The 2 points of realising if I don't do something about it, my kids aren't going to get fed. And also that I didn't want to fall in, because of my own passions and where I want to be, into this selling myself and my brand, which is very hard because all of my business comes off referrals, and the referrals will generally be people who work with me or have been engaged with me.
And in terms of that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, how are you actually continuously motivating yourself then to stay on top of it and not fall into the trap of just doing what you said, which is promoting yourself rather than what you're
I think the hardest thing is keeping yourself motivated in an environment where you haven't got that motivation coming down in either objectives or regulatory deadlines that your own organisation is facing. Yep. And often, because we work on project basis, or as I say, with some of our virtual resources, we work periodically over a month for a couple of days. You've really got to be quite focused, and you've got to use your time wisely. Generally, the way I do it is I set myself objectives. So we have targets the company wants to meet in terms of customer satisfaction, but in terms of growth. And I surround myself with like-minded people. So our business is built up from individuals that have either worked for me, worked with me. Some cases I may have worked for them.
Sure.
People of similar minds on how security should be delivered and the value that can come from security, but not so similar that they're not afraid to have an argument with me over it, right?
Sure.
And then in doing that, I know that the outcome is going to be the same. So then we're driven by customer satisfaction and actually completing a piece of work and seeing someone's happy by it is all the motivation you need, really.
So how it's yourself, and are you a bunch of group of partners that are working with this organisation?
So we've got a core team of 5.
Yep.
We're a blend of staff and associates. And then we've got about another 10, 15 that we can call on. It gets harder as you grow because this whole 1 degree of separation starts to become a real problem. Sure. And also because the associate pool we can't provide full-time work to, certainly not after the 1st of April anyway. The challenges we're going to have in April. You then have to find people who are self-sufficient in generating their own work, and there aren't that many of us, right? Certainly not at the CISO level, and then as you start to go down into some of the more enterprise security architecture role, most of those people are looking for interim positions rather than 2 days a week, 2 days a month kind of positions.
I don't think the model has really reached the UK marketplace yet in any level of maturity, right? As much as both of us would like to try to push it. I don't think it's there.
It's interesting though. I think actually that whole virtual CISO capability as a service model is starting to grab traction. Only recently I was talking to one of our clients who was looking for an interim. And we were actually helping them with the recruitment process because we had the technical capability and the experience to sit down and say, well, does this CV match up to the individual that's sat in front of me? And we found someone, and it was great. Unfortunately, that person backed out and the search started again. And it was at that point, I just sat down and said, look, we don't openly push our services to you. We were in there doing some other work with them at the time. I said, but there is this capability as a service model that you might want to have a look at. And when we sat down and we looked over it and we basically said, look, the benefits of this are, cost-wise, it's about the same, maybe slightly cheaper than getting an interim in, depending on the experience you want. Outcome-wise, it's far in advance. The speed at which we can turn things around, the vast pool of resources and capabilities we have behind us to ask questions, just the library that we have of methodologies and everything else that we've built up over the last 3 years far exceeds, in my mind, individuals and independents as a main, right? I'm not suggesting that there aren't other people out there. And actually selling that as the value and the outcome, and also we commit to what we're going to deliver, right? So it's not just, in this particular instance, it's 10 days a month they're getting. We're not just saying it's 10 days a month and we walk away. We're actually driving it by outcomes and saying this is what you're going to get from
and there's a lot more structure to what you're trying to do anyway in that sort of project environment.
It actually has to be, right? Because it's not just turning up Monday to Friday, sitting there and making your way through what's going on. It's actually saying, I'm going to deliver this and to this quality and in this time frame.
So IR35 may change that, though. It may be much more attractive for people to jump onto, outcome-based service delivery models rather than, fully interim models.
Yeah, and I don't think I want to turn this talk into an IR35 debate.
We already had that this morning.
Good. All right. Because I think it's going to be, in one mind, it's suck it and see. I think we'll find out what happens. I think there's a lot of panic. I think people just need to step back and think about, you can still deliver services. You can still be an individual supporting an organisation. You can be an independent. You've just got to structure your engagement properly. So
now with you sort of leading and heading an organisation, I still think you're very much a practitioner, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we touched on this, before we started recording this about the role of the CISO.
Yes.
I'm very much a practitioner. I've seen that role, be many different things. But I don't think necessarily the role title gives justice to what the individual does or the individual may perform. So what's your kind of take on how we as practitioners should really be describing ourselves? What's your personal take on that?
I think it's very challenging, right? So, and we as a peer group have been discussing this for some time, right? So the prime example we use is a CFO. I think ask anyone what a CFO is and what they do, 80% is going to be the same, right? There's obviously the little nuances that you get in different organisations, but people understand the structure and the role of a CFO. The CISO role changes depending on who it is that's recruiting it or who it is that needs it. And I think, certainly where we see a lot of differences between the strategic CISO and the technical CISO, right? Or as we would call it, CISO and head of IT security. There have been in my career where I've looked at opportunities and come to the conclusion that CISO by title only, and actually it is a head of IT security or potentially a head of information security that's been dressed up to either attract talent or capability, or because actually they don't know the organisational structure that sits underneath it, and CISO seems to be the role that everyone either wants or should have, and they can say we have a CISO. And I think for me, and it really depends on who you are as a person. So when I was younger, CISO was a job title I wanted, right? And you kind of chased after it, and it had a lot of responsibility, a lot of stature,
prestige.
Yeah, exactly. Corner office, nameplate. I don't think I ever got an office.
I think they abolished them by the time everything was open plan.
Exactly. So there was just that prestige with it, and I think actually, what I quickly learned was what is it I wanted to be doing. And for me, I have a technology background, so I have an appreciation for technology. I understand how that helps us. But actually, the majority of the work I do now is around strategy, and looking forward, and actually methodologies and frameworks. So how can organisations construct their security efforts in such a way to drive themselves forward and deliver value that's demonstrable, rather than just, we went from a 3 to a 4. Right?
I've heard that quite a few times.
So, and maturity targets are important, and we do use those in our strategy because we have to say, where are you now and where are we going to apply our efforts? But actually, there's a whole load of objectives and outcomes that we also want to measure that takes us through. So once we've spent this money over 3 years, what does that mean for us?
Yeah.
So for me, it's all around that strategy piece, and we call our services, capability service, virtual CISO, whatever we want to call it. But actually, when it gets down to it, is, are we looking at strategy? Are we looking at culture? Are we looking at technology? Are we looking at
behaviours
and
so on and so forth?
So for us, it's a service name. It's not a job title.
Yeah.
And a lot of the work we do is actually helping organisations build those target operating models and organisational structures. And we have that whole debate of, Is that a CISO? Are you going to call it a CISO? Is it head of information security? Majority of roles that we've been helping organisations with at the moment are predominantly technology focused. So then you turn around and say to them, well, what about informational assets? What about personnel? What about physical? Who's looking after staff travel security? Who's looking after facility security? So can that really be a CISO if actually they're not covering the 4 domains of information security?
And you're siloed into potentially just looking at one or
Exactly.
2, right?
And again, depends on who you report into in the organisation and therefore what domain you're given.
So I don't know if you've been keeping up the news with RSA. Obviously, it's going on this week, right? So there was a presentation yesterday that described a product security officer.
I heard. I was told about this in a lift this morning as I was leaving a meeting. The CPSO.
The CPSO.
Yes.
So I couldn't help but chuckle at the presentation, but it did make me wonder about the way that the vendor community now is looking at how to take on the role of a security practitioner that demonstrates that they have good technical rounded capability around services and products and other things they're offering. So it did make me laugh. But my point is, how do you feel the connection between vendor, supplier, consultancy, third party, managed service, MSP? I mean, there's so many different facets to the security community as a whole. But I feel they're fractured. So how would you, in your current role, then start looking at helping to solve some of that problem? Because clients find it really difficult, in my view, to connect the dots sometimes between services.
I always find this quite interesting. I like to think that when I was in industry, I had healthy relationships with my providers. And I think, to be fair, that's probably demonstrated by the fact that as I moved into the consultancy space, those relationships have grown. And actually some of our common friends, I work very closely with them, who have been providing services and selling services since, I was at university. Right? So I think sometimes there is an element of, we as security professionals can blame vendors and salespeople an awful lot for the way they engage with us. Sometimes we need to sit back and think about how are we engaging with them, what time are we giving them to be able to build that relationship with us.
So and I think you raised a really good point, and it's probably the way that I see it is that you see a lot of noise about supplier, vendor, third party, CISO, right? And suddenly there's a line of delineation that the CISO doesn't have time for all of these individuals, and doesn't want to make time for these individuals, and I'm so busy I can't attend X, Y, Z. And I don't know whether that's just fluff or is the sense of the CISO's ego got so inflated. Actually, they are tarnishing the relationships. They're going to help them solve problems.
I think it's I think in the main a good CISO is really busy, right? Because they are actively out looking at how they can solve the problems of the business, not waiting for the problems of the business to come up and bite them. But I do think there is a bit of once bitten, twice shy. Had a poor relationship with a vendor, therefore until someone comes along and wows me, I'm not going to bring them into the fold. Actually, in this day and age, and I could be a bit biased because I'm now one of those suppliers, we like to think ourselves more of a partner, but actually the way that you can overcome your challenges is by letting them in and letting them in to help you.
But also I think they can't take a personal note to that. They can't allow their personal feelings of X cloud their judgment to support company Y, right? Because they're doing the organisation they work for a disservice.
Don't get me wrong, there are some bad engagement models out there into industry and into CISOs. I think there's less of those than there used to be. I still think there's overselling, overpromising. We need to fix that. But I do think that if you are protecting an organisation's assets, then you need as much help as you can get. That doesn't mean open the door to everybody, but it does mean make some more time to get to know these people. At the end of the day, it's someone trying to do a job. They're trying to see whether they can deliver value to you. You might need to help them. I mean, I have a couple of instances where I had people come in and sell us products, and the use case they were selling it on was not the use case that was going to work for me. And I had a choice of telling them to go away or spend a bit of time with them saying, well, how does your product work? Could I use it in this way? Actually, would it divert some effort that I've got over in this space? And actually, in a couple of times, we ended up buying a product, not for what they were selling it for, but for the actual secondary or tertiary benefits that we saw from it.
Okay.
But that's because we spent some time with them and we got to know the product and understand that sometimes, and companies need to stop doing it, but sometimes they sell salespeople that have been on a 1 week course.
Sure.
And all they know is the corporate pitch.
And actually, that's probably quite damaging for their reputation as much as it is for, actually, if you were to take the premise, I'm not going to talk to you now because you've just entirely wasted my time by not knowing what my needs were even before you walked into a room. So,
I did like the 10 pieces of advice for salespeople that was recently shared out by Cybertalks from one of the other guys that's been on it. I thought that was brilliant. I did think that they were. I think some people might not have read that with the satire that it was.
I think it was meant with a pinch of salt, right?
It was very good, sir. I did like it.
So moving on from being an internal CISO practitioner and having to face off to an exec team and provide your your reporting on the state of cybersecurity, have you seen that attitude and approach change now that you're running your own consultancy service and the way that businesses engage with you? Do you feel that the conversation is elevated and the dynamic has changed, or is it still pretty much the same from your personal experience in that engagement?
I think it's probably a bit of both, right? So generally the person that is engaging us understands that they have a challenge. They may not know what that challenge is. We may be helping them actually unearth the breadth of the problem and the issues they need to resolve. But they are obviously receptive to it because they're paying for us to come in. They've said this is what we want you to do. And then, interestingly, I think more often than not, when you're stood in a boardroom talking to a board as an external with the bios that my team have around the experiences they've got, they do tend to listen a little bit more. And I've always found that a little bit odd, bearing in mind that you've got someone who you've hired and you're paying to do all of this for you, and the experience is no different in some cases, in fact better in a lot of cases than some consultants, because they understand the business and they understand the business priorities and challenges and regulation and everything else that is in this kind of melting pot of your organisation. But they will look at this external and go, well, you're external, you must
There's some disconnect in psychology somewhere, right?
I do think so, because you're also looking at someone who's part of their process is to sell, right? Yeah. And they're there to tell you about honestly, hopefully, and with integrity, the challenges that the industry is seeing. But ultimately, it's there to get some return value back out of that engagement. Whereas an employee, ideally, is there to take you forward as an organisation for the betterment of themselves and the company. Right?
So just on the back of that question then, have you found that when you talk to people about education, training and awareness and culture and behavioural change, it's now much, much easier as an external practitioner and was a lot harder as an internal?
Same challenges, I think. Some of the times we have that conversation, very receptive, and actually we go off and we deliver it, or we help them find a provider for it. So again, one of the key things we're doing is not going in with a list of all the services we offer and trying to get. It's not like service bingo. What we are doing is trying to make sure that they get the value out of what they need. So in a lot of cases, we just help them find someone to do that. Actually, I have to say, in my industry role, training and awareness was a big part of what we did. And, we had regular drop-ins where people could just come in. We had meeting rooms. We produced a lot of material. The team that did this were absolutely fantastic at it. The whole awareness campaign had a brand, an internal brand that was used. Every time you saw something to do with security, had this brand with it. That brand stood up on its own. I mean, it's really well thought out, and I don't take any credit for it because it was the team that was working with us in the organisation. So they just seem to get it. I still think that people really undervalue what awareness, education, training can do for their staff. I see a lot of occurrences of annual CBT, dry material, churns over, just 10 questions at the end. Did you get more than 80%? Well done. You can forget about it for 12 months. I mean, just simple changes we find, like doing test first, train second. So actually, how well does someone know the subject matter before you make them sit through half an hour of it? Changes the culture. because people who know the subject aren't subjected to it, and the people that are can then be given more targeted training. Again, just little steps trying to get people away from this. Well, we got a 30-minute course. It's written by an external. It's got probably an animated cat in it somewhere. That makes it fun, right?
Sure. I mean, I think the challenge is twofold around cultural change and behavioural change. I think both of us have seen that in situ, in seat, trying to gain, I would say, the accountability of going out to a business and saying we need to do X, Y, and Z to help you educate. Versus selling a service there's always a huge difference. But if you can make a 1 degree, 2 degree change, per year, you're going to have some major impact in the way that people talk about cybersecurity, but also helps reduce risk, which is also a good thing. Right. So in terms of your,
on that kind of 1-2 degree, repeatedly, both in industry and since then out in some of our customers, the most simplest thing we've done, which has made the biggest impact, is give them a faceless email address they can ask questions to. So
really?
Ask Security, whatever you want to call it, promote that out to the business. Say anything you want to ask about security, you can ask us. Right? You need a small team that monitor the mailbox to be able to respond to it. It's not their primary job, side of the desk kind of stuff. And actually, in a couple of organisations now, what we've seen is that people don't think that they're talking to the CISO or the head of security or their line manager. They can ask some what they may feel are stupid questions.
Right.
So we were getting a big influx of, is this LinkedIn email real or is it a phishing? How did they get my work email address? So it's not difficult
you
to work
provided
that
it.
out. It's on your LinkedIn. We need to talk about that. Whatever it may be, we at one point we had people asking us about, I've got 3 kids at home and my wireless keeps dropping out. What can I do about it? We had a little chat in the team and went, no, let's answer that. Help them with their home networking. And actually, then when we went through our simulated attack scenarios, where we actually launched some phishing against the organisation, not just standard phishing tests, but some intelligence-led phishing tests, that inbox lit up with people going, this doesn't look right, this looks suspicious. And actually, that was one of our best defences, not the technology we had, not the filtering, because we were specifically designing it to get past our filters, was large groups of people saying, I've emailed out to my team because it looks suspicious and I've asked you about suspicious emails before and you said this is what I need to look for, so I've emailed the team, just let me know if I need to retract that. And that it spread like wildfire through the organisation.
So it's the carrot, not the stick, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's also the fact that just give them an open environment in which people can just ask questions and they're not getting, Jeff in IT came back and said I was an idiot because I thought that was phishing. Well, very constructive response that just says, no, that is an actual, real, legitimate email. You can bin it if you don't want to do anything with it. And for the investment we made in it, which was minute, biggest return I saw.
Excellent. So for you as an organisation, are you guys doing anything to support the next generation of cybersecurity practitioners or people that want to come in and work in this industry? Internships, placements for students, that kind of stuff.
So completely honestly, at the moment, no. But we have had a number of conversations. So we have had some conversations with the University of Portsmouth. That's where I went to university. It's where I'm currently living. I say that as if I won't be living there. Sure, I've been living there so long. There's no way of getting the family to move away from there, as much as I would like to be in San Francisco. But we are talking to them. And I think the key thing for me as a small business is I've got to give them value.
Yep.
So where we are at the moment, bringing an intern in, I'd be worried that they wouldn't be kept busy day in, day out. So it's not because I don't want to do it. We absolutely do. It's more that there are probably other organisations out there that can offer them up. What we have done is actually we've done a lot of introductions for the local university into some of the local schools. So they've got a great campaign at the moment around security awareness.
Yep.
But they're starting it in schools.
That's good.
So there's a couple of schools I got them introduced into, but they've done a fantastic job across the other schools as well. And they're running events for parents to come in and talk about internet safety. They're talking to the kids about it. I think things like that are just fantastic because we talk a lot about kids aren't taught money management at school. They don't talk about cyber risk properly either, right? So learn how to look after your money and your cyber profile. You can have a good future.
Because all your digital wallet is your money,
Well, exactly.
So what's next for you and your organisation then? Looking forward 2020, maybe next 5 years. where are you guys going to focus your attention, or is it going to be this broad scale kind of stuff for the next few years?
So we're working at the moment. We're working with a platform provider to start automating a lot of the assessments and the initial kind of work that we do, and we're looking into third-party risk management, and then into GRC. So, we want to be an independent technology agnostic business, but we still need technology to run.
Do it. Yeah.
Right? So we had a bit of an internal battle between, but if we choose one, are we not saying this is the platform people should use? Well, in one regard, we are, right? Because we're going to sell some services off it.
Sure.
But we had to choose. So we're doing that. And more where I am and where we've come from this business is, and it's with my original kind of thought that I had back in 2017, is we want to provide access to the capability that organisations cannot attract or retain for some reason, right? So with some of the larger security teams, it could just be capacity.
Yep.
Yeah, they're established, mature environment. They've got a particular piece of work they need doing. Might be 2, might be 4, might be 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's a project. We've got some experience and expertise that can help them. For smaller organisations, and we work with organisations of 20 employees up to about 4,500 globally, it's that on-time access to capabilities which they don't have.
And tools and services, right?
Oh, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a trusted partner network that we can deliver all the things that, we are strategic, forward-looking individuals. We're not pen testers. So we have partners that can do that for us. My personal vision for the company, we've got quite a bit more growth to do over the next couple of years. We're not going to be a large consultancy firm. I'm not looking to build a business to sell it. The reason we came, or certainly I decided to start this company, was I enjoy cyber. We were talking about this earlier. I went through a period in 2017 where I actually seriously considered a career change. I sat there and went, and I've always wanted to own a restaurant. A few people know I'm actually a trained chef. And if it wasn't for the family coming along, I probably would have bought and failed a restaurant many years ago, right? And we thought about that in 2017, and I looked at my 3 children, and I looked at our lifestyle, and I went, that's not going to work, is it? I want to see more of the kids, so I'm going to run a restaurant.
I don't want to cook this away.
Yeah, exactly. So I did have this period where, I became detached from what we were doing.
Yep.
And I'm very much back into it again, enjoying it.
So something's exciting you. What is that then? What's brought it back?
As really cringe as it sounds, is the value to our clients. Right, so I've always enjoyed, and proper sales pitch, right? But no, I've always enjoyed. It's probably that part of me that always wants praise. Never got it as a child. It's that seeing that we've delivered an added value to someone, where they've overcome a challenge, or we've helped them take that next step on their journey. Is really what we enjoy, and being able to do that in different places. So it's variety, and we're working with a startup at the moment, helping them build out their greenfield security. We're working with established businesses that are a couple of decades old, helping them fix some of the compliance issues that have developed over the years. We're doing very different things. Yeah. Behind all of it are good people, all trying to get a job done. And they just want some help and advice that takes them forward. So one of the things I like about what you guys are doing, and I know it's not your only marketplace, but the services you provide within the SME and SMB market, and probably the way that you provide the service and the professionalism that you provide behind the service, I think is wonderful, because I don't think necessarily that a lot of those organisations have and can afford, qualified, let's call them qualified security people. And even if they do, they'll probably get ripped off in some way, shape or form. And I've seen that happen quite a lot. So actually, I applaud you guys for sort of touching in that space and being quite proactive in trying to bridge a gap, right? Because everyone should be entitled to some level of cybersecurity advice and guidance that doesn't cost them the entire budget of their entire business. So I think it's really good what you guys are doing. No, thank you.
It's helping solve a problem, and there, if there are a few of us out there that are trying to solve that problem, I think we'll get to a phase or a position where cybersecurity is the norm and not the outlander, right?
Well, exactly, and for me, I think there are organisations that will suffer very badly from the smallest cyber attack, right? Yep. Whether it's a bit of malware outbreak that isn't targeted, or whether it is someone actually going after them for some reason. And as you say, they can't all afford the cost of business. Doesn't equate to actually the cost of doing the cyber piece as well. So we do try to be very targeted and help those organisations, and it's quite gratifying when you get that kind of feedback. And one of our clients was quite public about it recently, where they said, we get big bank experience in a small challenger bank, at a much reduced cost to what we would be paying if we went for a full-time employee.
But it's not just that. It's not just value for money. It's value for advice, right?
Yeah.
And I think probably the circles in which we are accustomed to, we know the quality of advice that we can give each other, because actually as a peer group, it's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then when that's translated into a service and not just a satisfaction from customers, it's actually good for the community as a whole, because it's sending the right message across. And there are lots of charlatans out there that then do a disservice both to the customer and to the profession. But I think where you guys are heading is pretty cool. So keep it up.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and we're very much looking forward. We're now 2.5 years old. We'll be 3 this August. We're looking forward to the next 3 years. It has its ups and its downs. I think. I can imagine. I think there is a different level of stress when it's your own business, and you're not responsible for all of the delivery, and trying to maintain that quality and that engagement and the values.
So maybe you can cook your staff their Christmas lunch this year.
Maybe I tend to take them somewhere where someone else does
it for me.
I've
said it on air. So.
Edit that out.
Any last words for our viewers? Anything else you would like to share with our community?
I think we've covered a lot, right? And I think the one message, and you've heard me pipe on about this before, is there's a lot of great technology out there. There's some not so great. We need to be thinking about all the non-technological components that we need to be working on. And I would actually argue that some of your best protection will come from your people and from your oversight, not specifically from your technology. But then again, I'm getting quite excited about automation at the moment, because we can automate a lot of the kind of low-level people work that we used to do before, which means that we can then target those people at much better things. So, no, for me, it's just, we talk about cyber a lot. People tend to lend that to technology.
Yep.
For me, it's top-down governance, assurance, risk management. If you're not starting there, how do you know you're spending your money in the right place, right?
Absolutely. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining Cybertalks today. Really appreciate it. Hope to see you again in the future.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks.